Hey everybody, Janey here from Sage and Seer, and welcome to my channel. And today I'm talking to a really amazing, fabulous lady, Bernie Smyth. And I've known Bernie for a long time now. First met Bernie in the Irish School of Homeopathy, and she was one of my amazing teachers, and I just feel so lucky to have met her, and we've carried on being friends outside of school. And Bernie is down in Cork, and she has been practicing for many years, probably over 30 years. Is it, Bernie?
25.
25, yeah, brilliant. And today we're going to be talking about Lyme, which is something that Bernie's dealt a good bit with in her practice. And I know it's a really relevant illness at the moment. There seems to be a lot of people with all these kind of Lyme-related issues, fibromyalgia, and Bernie's had quite a bit of experience treating it. So you're very welcome, Bernie. And
Thanks, Janey.
Tough to have you here. And just start off, tell us how you actually got into homeopathy.
Yeah, interestingly, well, when I left school first, I actually trained and worked as a veterinary nurse with animals, so worked with lots of different animals, cats and dogs primarily, but also we used to have like wild birds, wild animals, foxes, all sorts of things in the practice. And so I worked as an animal nurse for 4 years anyway. And
yeah,
I loved it, but the only thing I didn't like was the amount of drugs that the animals used to get,
Yeah.
So I began to see, like if a dog was knocked down and he'd be brought in for treatment, he'd have penicillin and streptomycin, and cortisone. Penicillin, cortisone. If the dog had a cut on if he got bitten by another dog, he'd have penicillin and cortisone. If he got food poisoning, he'd have penicillin and cortisone. It was like pen and strep and bets, pen and strep and bets, pen and strep and bets. And I used to think, oh my God, does every single animal gets penicillin and cortisone? So they all got a shot of this, so much so it was mixed up in the bottle. Pen and strep and bets, which is penicillin, streptomycin, and betsilin, which was like cortisone.
Wow. The combo.
So everything.
The combo. Yeah.
So we had the combo. Give that dog Bernie a shot of pen and strep and bets. And I thought, eventually I used to think, wow, what, pen and strep and bets? Everybody gets that. It's a bit like modern medicine, antibiotic and cortisone for German shepherds, And the only difference was if you were a Jack Russell, you got half a mil, and if you were a big dog, you got 5 mils. That's all there was. But it was brilliant and I loved it. But I just didn't like that part of it,
Yeah.
So I just thought, So in the end, I did leave and I went traveling around Europe and did lots of teaching and lots of singing and things like that. And then I came back to Ireland and I hooked up with a fella, and so we had a little farm out in the country, and I had dogs and ponies and horses and 40 birds and chickens and ducks and everything. And I had this beautiful collie. We were soulmates. She used to follow me everywhere. She was beautiful, and she had this little puppy. And anyway, I went out one morning and the puppy was dead, and she was having fits, falling over, twitching, and I thought, oh my God, they've been poisoned with strychnine, And of course, if you lived in the country, they don't do it now, but farmers used to throw down poisoned meat, So anyway, I said to my husband, I thought, oh my God, my dog has got strychnine poisoning. And I knew in veterinary medicine, most animals I'd seen with strychnine poisoning would die of respiratory paralysis because it eventually, causes your muscles to seize and you can't breathe. So I took her to the vet and he said, oh yeah, we'll give her a sedative. And he said, and can you put these little pills under her tongue? So I thought, what are those little pills? Is he mad? this guy must be nuts, putting these pills under her tongue. So he said, yeah, um, put her in a quiet room because of the stimulants, and
Yeah.
give her one under her tongue every hour, even if she's unconscious. And I was going, this guy is nuts. So anyway, I went home with my dog, who was knocked out, put her in the dark room, and gave her this thing under her tongue every hour. And I said to my husband, I've never seen a dog really, or I've only seen one or two dogs really survive this. I can't see how she'll
Yeah.
survive. But the next morning I went in and she was wagging her tail.
Wow.
And by tea time, she was up staggering around. And the next day she was perfect. And I thought, what is that? What were those little pills? So I went back to him and he said, they're actually homeopathic remedies called Nux, and they contain
Nux
strychnine.
vomica.
That's why it worked for your dog. So I said, I am going to study that.
Yeah. Wow. Incredible. Yeah.
So that's how I started, And I saw coincidentally, he was doing a talk a week later. I saw it in the post office. There was a sign saying the vet was talking about homeopathy. And I ran off. I said, I'm definitely going to that. And I went to that, and there were 5 people there in this big, huge hall. Nobody knew what it was. That was
Yeah.
1989. And nobody knew. 1990. And nobody knew what it was. And now, it's amazing.
Yeah, now it's everywhere. Did you study in the Burren?
No, I studied in Dublin. I kind of then I went on I decided I'm addicted now. So but there wasn't any, I couldn't find, actually at that time, the time that happened, there wasn't actually any schools in Ireland. They didn't open till 1990. So that was 1989, and I was reading up about it and trying to research it. And then I saw there's a school opening in Dublin. I couldn't get around to it because then I had my baby and all that, and I thought, I can't go now when I have a small baby. So as soon as he was old enough, I rang up the place in Dublin and went for a weekend, and that was it. I thought, right, this is it. This is me. I'm booked. I'm hooked.
Oh, wow.
And
so your practice has evolved from there.
Yeah.
Bernie,
So I started studying in 1994, I think it was, or 95. And at the same time, I had a job in the health food shop. So I was really lucky because I'd come home from work, from college, and I would practice. I would be able to give acute remedies in the health food shop all day. So by the time I was in 3rd year, I was already practicing under supervision. So I've had a very busy practice ever since. I've been very lucky. And the good people of West Cork, I treat their sons, daughters, aunties, uncles, grannies, sister-in-laws, neighbours, all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still have a menagerie of animals down there?
I don't now. I don't anymore because that was when I was living in the country, and I got so busy in my clinic, and I was driving in and out and my son into school. So I eventually gave up being a hippie-ish, and it's still a hippie, but I had to move into town, and so I only have a dog and a cat now. But I might go back to it one day.
Yeah, you might be the mad cat lady one day.
Jesus. But friends of mine run the local animal rescue centre, so I help them out a lot with remedies. So I'm still in touch with animals.
Yeah. And is that vet still around that you met?
Tom is still in Rosscarbery, and we were doing veterinary in the same place in Dublin. So he's still there, and he's really busy. So it's great.
Yes. So I guess, like, for anybody watching that doesn't know, then homeopathy for animals is really exploding at the moment because there's a lot of vets that have trained and they're starting to use it consistently in their practices, and the results are phenomenal. And obviously the biggest thing being that there's no side effects from homeopathy, and also it's taken off in horse racing as well because horses are so highly strung. and they're all drug tested. So there's ways of using homeopathy that have profound effects on animals, and not just for their kind of physical issues, but also for their kind of mental health and well-being. You know, if you have a dog who's really kind of timid or barks all the time, then homeopathy is incredibly powerful for treating those kind of issues. In Denmark, actually, I have 9 friends in Denmark. They were all on Dynamis with me, and they were all vets, and they came to study with Jeremy Seer, and I think 8 of them were vets. One of them was a veterinary nurse, and they're using that in their practice now as a way of treating animals.
Brilliant.
Yeah, isn't it? It's just incredible the scope that it has. But for you,
could I just say, if anybody wants to look up about homeopathy for animals, there's a great little Facebook. You can look it up on Facebook, and they're local people here. They work with Tom. They're farmers, and it's called HAWL, which is homeopathy at welly level.
Oh yes, I will put the link to that. Yeah,
they're really brilliant. They do
Paul,
lots of stuff.
yes,
yeah, even goldfish.
Brilliant. I'll put the link to that in the description underneath. That's fantastic, because those kind of groups are a wealth of knowledge for people.
They're incredible. They're treating their cows with mastitis remedies, all sorts of it. It's brilliant.
I do a bit of that, although we have to say it's healing. I've treated animals around here just with the radionics machine and had great results. It's
brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually had a farmer recently, I treated him, he had a foal, and when I went to see it, it was just standing in the corner of the barn, and head in the corner, was just completely given up on life, covered in this really awful rash, its whole body weeping and scabby, and the poor little thing was just desperate. And ended up treating it. I saw him the other day, and he said the foal is just new lease on life. The rash disappeared. Just incredible. And I thought it hadn't worked because he didn't get back to me. You know, the way people...
But I always say that to students. We always think, when you don't hear from someone, you always think the worst. And actually, usually the reason you don't hear from them is that they've got better.
And that's what happened. And he's invited me down to see the foal at some stage again. But the poor thing, honestly, it had completely given up on life. He said it wouldn't even leave the barn. It was just in the corner, head down. You know, it was really, really sad to see. But the remedies I prescribed, I made up a spray bottle, and he just sprayed it on the foal's nose and mouth, and came good. And it wasn't mange, it was almost like a kind of a really bad dermatitis, psoriasis.
Poor baby.
Poor thing. So
awful,
isn't it? Yeah. And he'd treated it with stuff from the vet for actually it was something that you'd use on sheep, and that had just made it 10 times worse.
Probably that benzoate stuff,
So in those kind of cases, the first thing I actually did was I started to treat his liver, the foal's liver, just to support it. And then once I'd kind of worked on the liver with the remedies, I just went straight in then with a miasm, and there was another remedy in there as well. But just incredible to see that turnaround.
It's brilliant.
He was at his last, it was his last resort. I think that's how a lot of people come to homeopathy, isn't it, Bernie? That they've gone all the way through.
I think that's really what I see a lot, and I'm sure other homeopaths see a lot is, people who've tried everything else, and been everywhere else, and it's like, what have you got to lose? And they turn up at your door, and then they get a good result, and they can't believe it because they've been struggling for so long, And and like that with Lyme disease, which is really on the rise. Certainly where I live in West Cork and Kerry, so many clients. I've seen a lot of people with Lyme, like and they've been misdiagnosed. For example, like the conventional medical system has not got a clue about
Yeah.
Lyme, and so people are told, like generally with Lyme, you have a lot of symptoms like rheumatoid arthritis, joint pain, foot pain, and of course it can be symmetric, or sometimes it isn't. But people go to the GP and they have a whole range of bloods done for the inflammatory, and their inflammatory markers show nothing. So one case I had, a guy came to see me. Now he was lucky because he'd only actually been bitten like in the June of that year. And it's so weird. He woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning in his bed in West Cork and felt there was something, stinging him like a wasp or something. And it was this little brown spider.
Wow.
So weird, so weird. A little brown spider. And so his wife's a nurse. They were going, God, that was weird. And maybe 3 days later, there was no mark, just a little red, he started to get pain in his left hamstring, and he thought, God, I'm very stiff. And then a week later, it was in his right hamstring, and he was going for physio. Then his wrist started to hurt. He couldn't open a jar. Shoulders. I saw him coming into my office. I was going, oh my God, look at that man. He was like crippled with the pain. He came to see me in so between June and November. He came to see me in November, and he was like stumbling. He was stumbling. He said he was crying with the pain. By that stage, he was on morphine pain patches. Really, really bad. And he'd been to two rheumatologists and a neurologist. And the rheumatologist had said, look, there's nothing in your blood. It doesn't look like rheumatoid arthritis because it's not in your blood. But we'll give you a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Everything is put down as fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
Even though you don't fit the profile, you're 49-year-old man. It's generally a women's disease.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually affect the feet first, on the show anyway. But we're going to give you these drugs for it, methotrexate and something else.
Yeah.
And only because he thought outside the box, he said, I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting that I have fibromyalgia. He said, but they keep telling me I have. And he said, I've read it all up and I don't have it. So again, I didn't know that much at the time. It was about 2 years ago. And out of my mouth, it just came. I said, you have Lyme disease. He said, how do you know that? And I said, I suspect you have. So we tried treating him. And in his case, the remedy, he actually told me his remedy, which patients often do. And he said, well, I'm not surprised I got sick after all the trauma in my life. And I said, well, how do you mean? And he said, well, dealing with my mother is like dealing with a toxic substance. You'd need to have a hazmat suit on. He said, it's like dealing with plutonium.
Oh, wow. There you go.
He actually told me that.
Yeah. And the effects of plutonium, that heaviness in the body.
Can't move your legs.
Yeah.
I was going, oh my God, this is brilliant. So I gave him plutonium, but I also said there's a herbalist, or a diet person, naturopath. I said, I think you should go and see her and do something with your diet. So he went out to her and she advised him to do the German blood test, and he had full-blown Lyme and Bartonella. The Irish blood test hadn't shown it up, and that is what's so common is people who have these joint problems, they go and get the 2 Irish blood tests, and to be honest, they're about 30% accurate. So people are really ending up on drugs. That guy thought outside the box. He was better. 3 months, he was so much better. He is completely pain-free now, completely.
So
But
with his case, Bernie, then he is actually accrediting it to the spider, and because most people would know Lyme and associate Lyme with a tick.
not necessarily at all.
Wow, that's interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, so people bring that to
like,
your awareness now. It's not just because, I mean, I've had probably 3 cases in my practice,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I've treated them constitutionally, which is, you know, you're treating the whole picture when you treat someone constitutionally. And sometimes if you catch Lyme early enough, you can go straight in with Ledum,
it's brilliant.
which has great results. And I did that on one of my cases, and that was all they needed because we got it straight away.
Yeah.
But I guess, gosh, if it's spiders, did he actually, you know, see?
Honestly, I can tell you now that do you know how many people, I've done so much research on it now because I'm seeing so many clients now,
Yeah,
and the percentage of people who remember a tick bite is 30 to 40%.
right. Yeah,
So that is the sad part, that sometimes a tick can be so tiny that you don't see it, but
yeah,
also it's been carried by things like mosquitoes, sandflies,
yes,
like horseflies in Ireland. So
yeah,
if you have Lyme in your blood and a horsefly bites you, and then the horsefly bites someone else,
yeah. That's it.
there you go.
Transmission. Yeah, yeah. So
So
what
because
are some of the symptoms that you're seeing that are kind of, you know, I guess
yeah,
the same in people, and just to, I
right,
guess, give people an understanding of what to look
absolutely.
out
Because
for.
I think it's the disease of the moment. It's just becoming, you know, so many people have it now in certainly in West Cork where I live. Um, but like if you're lucky in the beginning, the first thing, if somebody says they have a tick bite, give them Ledum straight away.
Yeah,
It can just deactivate it, you know.
yeah,
Um, but early signs are like that target bullseye rash that some people get if they're
yeah,
lucky. At least if they get it, you know what it is.
yeah.
Um, and a bit after that, flu-like symptoms, you know,
Mm,
aching in the arms and legs
yeah.
and a bit flu-y, as if you've had the flu, kind of one of
Mm,
the first symptoms. A good way to test if somebody has Lyme is to give them if they think they might have Lyme, is to give them Ledum 30 as a probe.
okay.
So if somebody has like aches and pains unexplained, you could try that and see.
Yeah,
And if they react, there's a good chance, you know. But then later stages where people like that guy developed very quickly. Some people get a tick bite or a bite and they have no symptoms. And then a year later, I have another lady who had the bullseye rash, did the antibiotics, perfect. And then a year later, her knee completely flared up, swelling up like almost deformed. And I said,
mm,
that's definitely Lyme disease you have. And that's classic. It kind of can go underground and then
okay.
something
Yeah,
traumatic happens in your life and up it comes.
yeah.
So joint pain, unexplained joint pain, swelling of maybe, or like one joint being affected. That's very common in Lyme, where somebody has one
Mm,
knee, one
mm,
ankle, very common.
yeah,
Rheumatoid arthritis, it's both sides.
yeah,
Lyme,
yeah,
and one of the big things, fatigue,
yeah.
terrible
Fatigue.
fatigue for some
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
insomnia, it's terrible insomnia in some people.
yeah,
So very tired, you can't sleep,
yeah,
and ringing in the ears, you see that in some people as well. Um, oh my God, there's so many, and funny pains, like faint pains that vibrate. People complain about that, and brain fog. I have a lady, and she just said, "Look, I'll put up with all of it, but I can't stand the brain fog. Not
yeah,
able to think, you know."
yeah,
Um, heart stuff, heart palpitations, chest pain,
yeah,
goes on and on, you know.
yeah. I know I
But
had
it,
one lady, and she had like, it would be this pain in her leg, and then that would go, and then she'd get pain in another leg, and then that would go, and then it would be her shoulder, and then that would stop, and then it would be her hip, and that would stop. And there was absolutely no rhyme or reason or pattern
Yeah.
at all
Yeah.
to what was,
Absolutely.
yeah. And have you noticed as well with the central nervous system?
Twitching.
Yeah.
A lot of twitching, kind of tremoring, like tremoring in the sleep, twitching, loads of twitching. Very like, and I had another man, and God love him. I mean, his job is a tree surgeon. Who would be more in contact with ticks and things like that? A tree surgeon. And he had spent 4 years been going from one doctor to another, to a specialist, to another specialist, 4 years. And his wife was out of her mind with 5 kids because he had all this. You could see his legs twitching. You could actually see his leg and twitching all over, like this horrible twitching, and terrible fatigue, and mouth ulcers, swollen glands can be typical as well. And I said, I think you have Lyme disease. But he'd been to 2 neurologists in the UK, and they were checking him for motor neuron disease.
Oh gosh, right.
Yeah, because he had all
because
this
of the twitching
and the fatigue and kind of losing weight. Lyme disease. Did the German test, tons of Lyme.
What do you think it is, Bernie? There seems to be some level of doctors not wanting to actually go down the Lyme diagnosis and passing it off as fibromyalgia or other things like Guillain-Barré syndrome as well. That seems to
syndrome, or even worse, telling people it's in your head.
Yes, I've had this with one of my clients. What do you think that, why
are they so in the whole of Ireland? There's one specialist, Jack Lambert, and he's in Dublin. There's one specialist in Lyme disease. Wow. And I heard him interviewed on the radio recently, and even he is saying, Irish doctors really need to learn more about Lyme disease, because he said it's definitely increasing, on the increase. The only thing he offers, I have seen patients who've been to him and he gives antibiotics. In recent years, he's giving antibiotics, and he's giving people magnesium and vitamin C as well. But, antibiotics wreck your gut, and that's another,
then there's side effects from and particularly with Lyme, they put you on long-term antibiotics, and sometimes they'll increase the dose and then you'll get better, and then they drop it, but you're still on them, and it's months and months and months, and that just destroys everything, doesn't it, really?
Destroys everything, But I have to say, I was actually talking to a specialist recently, socially, just because he's a friend of a friend visiting somebody, and of course it came up about Lyme disease because he's a rheumatologist, and they were saying, oh, Bernie treats a lot of Lyme cases, and he was going, Lyme. He said,
oh,
you know how many people, do you know how many cases are positive? He said 1 in 10,000 are positive.
No, I know. A friend of mine, she went to a conference a few years ago in Athlone. She's a chiropractor. She's very alternative. And they were even saying at the conference then, it was full of different practitioners. And they were even saying then, there's no such thing as Lyme. And this is an island. This is like, I think that's the beauty of homeopathy, is that, we would never dismiss something. If a client came in and said, I think I've got Lyme, I haven't been tested, but I'm not sure, I have these symptoms, there's no way we would ever say that's not possible.
No, or saying, trying to fit them into
a box.
Another thing, going, oh, well, how about, do you have any psoriasis in your scalp? Oh, you must have I had another guy who was saying, the specialist kept saying to him when he has Lyme disease, Have you any psoriasis anywhere? No. Have your family had psoriasis? No. Are you sure you haven't got any psoriasis in your scalp? He was going, no. He said, you have psoriatic arthritis. That's what
Oh,
you have.
yes. Yes, I've heard that one too. Yeah.
And we'll give you this drug for it and you'll be grand.
All immunosuppressant drugs as well that they use in those cases, which is one of the things that my client was on. And by the time she got to me, she'd had 12 years of an immunosuppressant drug, and she was puffed up like a balloon because she was also on steroids, and she just had completely lost sight of who she was as a person.
Terrible.
Because she'd been suppressed for so long with these drugs that she didn't even know who she was anymore. And
it's
you
terrible.
know, yeah,
I just don't know why they particularly won't accept Lyme. I don't know why.
yeah, it is known now, Bernie. I know a lot of people here know about getting the test done in Germany.
But sometimes even with that test, that can give you false negatives as well. So, very tricky.
Yeah, very tricky. Very tricky.
I'm under time constraints, Janey, at the moment, but I'd love to chat again.
Yes, yeah, we definitely will. Okay, Bernie, sorry, yeah, that's great. That's been really interesting conversation, and I will link your details into the chat box. If anybody wants to get hold of Bernie, I'll post that. And
or even finish the conversation another day or something. You know what I mean? We could do that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Great.
It's so lovely to see you.
You too, darling. Thank you so much. And
I'm so sorry I have to go. Only I have to go and do this thing.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Good luck with that, honey, and we'll chat to you again soon. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for watching. Much love.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Janey.
Bye, hon. You're welcome. Thank you. See you, Bernie.